Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Plugged In from YAA Electric. Today, I am joined by Justice. How are you doing? My name is Justin Fisher. Justice, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you today?
Lovely, lovely. I'm sitting backwards in my Model S, as you can see behind me. And if you're listening to the podcast, I'm actually not. But I hope everyone's having a wonderful day, and it's almost the weekend. Today, we're going to be covering quite a bit of Tesla news, looking at their price increases, and we think we've figured out why. I would say this is definitely why they're raising the prices. I wouldn't say this is a shot in the dark. It's pretty clear why Tesla is raising prices so frequently. About to dive into that. Also, we'll be looking at some news from Dodge. We don't hear a lot about electric vehicles and Dodge in the same sentence, but we've got some news to share there. Driverless Chevy Bolts are now cruising around town in your neck of the woods, Justice, around California. Talk about that. The Subaru Solterra and Toyota BZ4X are facing a pretty significant recall. I know people have told me countless times recalls happen all the time. They're no big deal. But when
Yep.
when the wheels could literally fall off, and the automakers have literally said, "Stop driving till you get this fixed." I would say that's a
Uh,
significant recall.
who needs your wheels to stay on your vehicle while you're driving? Who hasn't just lost a wheel here and there?
Just drive it till the wheels fall off. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
We're going to get kicked off today with some raw material news and how Tesla and other automakers are definitely feeling the pinch from raw material costs skyrocketing over the past year. We have some new numbers. Teslas now cost about 30 to 35% more than they did about a year ago. Some other automakers have raised their electric vehicle prices as too. I know that the Mustang Mach-E now costs about $2,000 more than it did a year ago. Somehow the Chevy Bolt costs less than it did a year ago, but it's a strange world we live in.
Well, and don't forget that Rivian controversy.
Yes.
They had quite a bit of kerfuffle about raising their prices too.
Yeah, Rivian raised their prices between $12 and $22,000. That's a lot.
Yeah.
But the latest numbers from Alex Partners show that raw materials for the creation of electric vehicle batteries, the cost for these raw materials has roughly doubled, actually more than doubled during the past year and a half. The cost increase is being led by materials such as cobalt, nickel, lithium, all of which are essential for the production of batteries. General Motors, Tesla, Lucid, Rivian, they're all having to raise their prices. Somehow the Chevy Bolt is going the opposite direction, but we won't get into that right now. Um,
Marketing money.
yeah, here's the numbers. Average raw material costs for an electric vehicle totaled $8,200 as of May 2022. That's raw material costs for a battery. Now, that's a 144% increase from where it was in March of 2020, so 2 years ago. That's a big increase. Now, back in March of 2020, Justice, do you remember how much a Tesla Model Y may have costed long range dual motor? It was probably still in like the $54,000 range back in May of 2020.
Yeah, somewhere in there. I don't recall exactly, but
So now it's roughly $65,000.
yeah.
We're seeing the effect of these additional raw material costs on the prices that consumers are having to deal with when they're deciding whether or not to go for an EV. The gap between electric vehicle prices and combustion prices has been widening a little bit. However, we can't forget that fuel prices, gasoline, diesel, have skyrocketed. So, depending on how many miles you drive, it could still make a lot more sense to go for an electric vehicle. Just as you and I, we like driving electric for other reasons too. It's not all about saving money. I think it's quite a
No,
nice place to be on the highway.
I think if you're doing it to save money, then it's probably not the right option yet. Getting there, but probably not yet. I think there's other reasons to do EV right now.
Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with how many miles you drive. at least 15,000 miles a year, which the average American drives about 15,000 miles a year, the math starts to make a lot more sense for you. Over at joinYAA.com, I have done the math for you, where I've looked at how long does it take to break even with and without the federal EV tax incentive for about 8 of the most popular electric vehicle models. And what we've seen is that as gas prices have risen from about 4.25 a gallon nationwide to $5 a gallon nationwide, we've seen between 6 months and 2 years shaved off of the break even point when you're comparing it to, let's say, Tesla RAV4 versus a comparably priced electric vehicle, maybe a Volkswagen ID4, Toyota BZ4X. Why is there such a big difference between different vehicles and their break even points? It's because it depends on the fuel economy of the combustion powered vehicle that you would have bought otherwise. So, for example, if you're going for a crossover combustion powered that typically gets 25 miles per gallon combined, and instead you're going to go for an electric vehicle that gets, let's say, an average of 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour, which could come out to roughly 100 miles per gallon equivalent, you're going to be saving a lot more money than if you're comparing a RAV4 hybrid, which gets over 40 miles per gallon, to an electric vehicle. So it's all about what you're comparing. Keep that in mind as you're doing the math yourself. Now, let's talk a little bit more about these raw materials, because Automotive News recently did a piece showing that, yeah, we need a lot more batteries, but we also need the entire supply chain to come together to support battery production in the United States. That's going to include things like lithium mines. We've been moving away from cobalt, but there are other rare earth materials, rare earth metals that are used in battery production. We're going to need the whole supply chain to come together. Justice, do you think we're headed in the right direction, or we're going to have to pick up the pace here in North America?
I think we're headed in the right direction, but definitely the pace needs to be picked up. I don't see it realistically happening by 2030. I don't think those goals are realistic at our current pace and our current challenges and where we get materials from. We need to diversify that. Right now, most of it comes over from China. I don't have a problem with China, but you can never be dependent on one country for everything. So it needs to be really diversified a lot. And I think that takes time.
Yeah, and we know that electric vehicles are not perfect for the environment, but all the math shows that they are far less harmful for the environment than combustion powered vehicles. And one way that we can look to clean up the electrification of the auto industry is to make it more localized. You don't want to be shipping raw materials, batteries, cars across the Pacific Ocean on a cargo ship that is one of the most polluting types of
Yeah.
transportation on Earth. That's not going to be helping the cause at all when it comes to pollution. Now, so Justice, we've talked about how raw Earth materials, the prices for these raw materials have gone up by 144% over the past 2 years. Another reason that Tesla continues to raise its prices is that people are willing to pay for them.
Yep.
3 out of 4 EV buyers in the United States choose a Tesla EV. By now, many industry experts had thought that that figure would be down to like 50%, 55%. Nope, Tesla still has 75% market share. I can't help but wonder how much of that is due to the fact that competing automakers have been hit hard by the parts shortage, the supply shortage, and due to a lack of semiconductor chips, they're just not able to make many EVs. Do you think that's been a pretty significant part of Tesla maintaining market share, or do people just love Teslas that much?
I think it's sort of both. Tesla has brand recognition. You say EV, and the first thing anyone thinks of is Tesla. Okay, so the traditional OEMs have to fight that. Plus, they're looking at. I think they just thought, okay, we slap some batteries in our cars and we're good to go. We're EVs, and they're finding out there's a lot more to it to make that transition. And so I think they're slower to come out with EVs that are competitive to Teslas with that. So right now, of course, Tesla is still in there. But Tesla's holding its own against ICE vehicles too. Now that we're seeing some numbers come through, and that's incredible. So, I think there's a lot to that brand recognition of Tesla.
Yeah, we have some new global numbers showing the performance of the Model 3. Justice, could you share that with us?
Yeah, so the Model 3 is now what the number 9 best-selling vehicle in the world car in the world.
That's
So
awesome.
globally, now, and that's competing with everyone, ICE vehicles and EVs. We're not talking about just EVs. So when only 9% of the global sales are EVs, Model 3 is number 9 in the world of all vehicles sold. That is a huge accomplishment when you're comparing it to literally everything else out there.
Hmm.
And this is sort of, I think the OEMs have to be taking note of that, to be the Tesla killer is going to be very difficult because they're just so far ahead, and the brand recognition and loyalty to them is just so far ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I see your little Elon Musk shrine behind you, Justice. I wonder why he was just saying the other day that he's worried about bankruptcy, or at least he still thinks about Tesla being susceptible to bankruptcy. I did not read into that story too much because I don't follow the day-to-day sayings of Elon Musk anymore. Maybe I used to, but why do you think he would still be anxious about bankruptcy at this point in the game?
Well, I mean, of course he's anxious about it.
He's got a lot to lose.
He well, and he's faced that down so many times already. You know,
2008 was the
um,
big one.
yeah, I mean, this is a man who put every single cent he had into his company, betting on himself and his company, living in, friends' houses, having no assets, just to keep things pushed forward. So that does something to you psychologically. But because he's gone through it, because he's seen the changes, he sort of knows, what's in the wind and what things can come through. He definitely has warned Rivian and Lucid of the same, that they need to sort of get their houses in order, or they're facing bankruptcy too. And I know all three of those CEOs are good friends with each other. It's not a warning like, oh, we're better, you better figure this out. It's look, this is the market, and we need to pay attention and keep it in there.
Yeah, speaking of the Tesla Model Y, we had someone in the chat saying the Model Y is actually starting to sell more than the Model 3. That's definitely true in the United States. Globally,
Mm-hmm.
I believe the Model 3 is still ahead. But the wait times to buy a Model Y here in the United States are now between it's going to be from January 2023 to July of 2023, depending on the trim and options that you select. That's quite the wait,
Well,
but
the Model Y is number 21 on the list of vehicles globally. So, but they expect by 2024, the Model Y will break through the top 10. It's definitely increasing in popularity, and I don't see that going down. I see that just increasing.
I can't help but wonder if some of Elon's more recent comments about bankruptcy and whatnot, if he could be just anxious that maybe they have built out their infrastructure a little too quickly when it comes to Giga Berlin, um, Giga Austin, I believe is what we call it, not Giga
Yeah,
Texas. But being from Texas, I just think of it as Giga Texas. However,
I
right
think
now
there's
they're not
another
able
one
to.
coming.
Yeah, yeah. Right now, they're not
I
able
think
to
that's what.
produce at full capacity, right? Because of even Tesla
Well,
being hit by the supply shortages. And that's got to be affecting the math that they had previously done as far as, when should we build another factory? When are we going to be able to start turning a profit on this factory? Well, that math isn't working out if they're not at full production capacity because of part shortages.
no, yeah, and he calls what Berlin and Austin money furnaces right now. They can't produce enough. They haven't got enough, so they're just shoveling money into both of these factories. Not all of Tesla. Tesla's still making money. They have other factories in Shanghai and California that are doing great. Um, But these two are right now, he's just calling money furnaces because they can't get production up enough. They can't ramp it up with the supply shortages. So it's really putting a strain on Tesla right now. And I think he sees that. And, if the supply chain doesn't get fixed, right, you can't just keep shoveling money forever.
And now Tesla is making it an option for some buyers within different regions of the southern US to buy a Austin-made Model Y that gets 279 miles of range, but it's still dual motor. Justice, pivoting to this topic a little bit, what might be the benefits of the Austin-made Tesla Model Y for the viewers and listeners who are thinking about buying Tesla's most popular vehicle?
Well, the new battery packs are the obvious one, and I believe actually Austin, because of the new battery packs and the way they're shipping them, if you're in that area, you actually can get them now rather than
Okay.
waiting. So there's a benefit there, but really it's the battery technology difference. They're the only ones pushing out the new battery cells.
Yeah, the 4680 cells
Yeah.
with the structural battery pack. Now, um, here at YAA, we are the only place that you can get a Tesla vehicle service contract uh, outside of Tesla itself. Is that the correct way to phrase it, Justice?
Yeah.
I
Sure.
mean, yeah, I guess for now. For now, it's good enough, right? Now, the reason I bring this up is because I can't help but wonder if the structural battery pack would be more difficult to repair in the case of a fender bender. I'm not sure, but that deserves a whole other show. What
Yeah, I
happens
would
if you
like to.
crash a Tesla?
Well, I can
Yeah,
tell you what happens if you crash a Tesla. What happens when they start, instead of having two parts, have just one part and you bend
yeah,
the frame?
yeah.
Um,
That's what I was
yeah.
thinking about.
hmm Yeah, I can tell you it's a problem when it's just two parts and they bend the frame. But yeah, the structural battery pack, I would like to see how batteries are in and out. I know I've watched videos of people taking them out of the Model 3 as it is now, and it's actually not very difficult. It's actually pretty quick to drop the batteries out and look at them, repair, or put something else. But I'd like to see how the new structure works on those.
Yeah, and I wonder if the ride comfort and road noise would be improved with the new 4680 structural battery pack. I feel like it could be improved road noise, which is one of the more common complaints for those looking for a luxury EV and considering a Tesla is that if you sit in a BMW, Mercedes EQS, or BMW i4 iX coming out, it's quite different. I mean, depends
Yeah,
on what you want though. Do you want a sportier ride that kind of sounds like a sportier car, or do you want a lofty luxury EV that just kind of floats over the road?
yeah, and there are people on our staff who love that noise, that
Mm,
engine, and that roar, and we have discussions about that
yes.
often.
I love how quiet my car is, I'll be
Yep,
honest.
I love the silence of an EV. I hated the roar of the engine when I was a kid, which is a lot longer than when you were a kid. And we didn't even know what EVs were. I still hated the roar of the engine. I was like, oh, it's so loud. Why does it have to be so loud? Um, and so I love my EV. I love the fact that I just go cruising along and all I hear is the wheels turning on the road.
Yes, yes, indeed. Now, let's talk some more news. So, you can now, if you choose to, ride in a driverless Chevy Bolt in select markets. Now, and specifically, this is San Francisco, Justice, which is pretty close to where you live in Sacramento, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so these self-driving test cars with human safety drivers have become a constant sight, but now you're able to ride in a completely driverless car. So this is a step towards commercialization of the service. I'm trying to make sure I get the story straight here. Is there still a safety driver sitting there staring at the road ahead, not driving, just sitting there just in case? I'm not quite
Not
sure.
No, not anymore. Not
Not
not with this
anymore.
new one. Yeah. So we've had the autonomous driving law passed a long time ago, where you had to have a driver. This new Update to the law is that you don't.
Oh,
I tell
okay.
you, I have driven in, not in public, but at a Silicon Valley company whose name shall be nameless right now. I have driven, or I have ridden in one of their autonomous buses around their campus, and it did a really fantastic job. It was an experience to know that there was nothing but a computer driving around there, and there were bikes and scooters and people crossing all over the place, and it just kept smoothly going. It was a fun experience. I don't know that I trust that out on the road with human drivers right now, but it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, who is responsible for accidents with autonomous cars? Hmm.
So the debate right now, as it sits in the California Senate, is the automaker. So if a Tesla on autopilot, and I think that's what we see, Tesla's on autopilot. If there's been crashes, um, the NTSB looks into them because they're holding Tesla responsible for that.
Interesting. Strange future, strange decade coming ahead of us. Justice, pop quiz. When you think of Dodge, what do you think of?
Personally, I immediately go to a 69 Charger. You say Dodge, I say Charger. I because that's the last time I liked one of their vehicles. um, but just and if you want to pressure me into an ICE vehicle, put a 69 Charger in front of me and put a Model 3, I'm going to get into the Charger. Sorry.
And I think of the modern day chargers that just happen to be everywhere here in the southeastern US and probably around the country.
Hmm.
There's a lot of chargers everywhere and they like to do donuts in the middle of the highway and stuff like that. Well, it looks like Dodge is teasing big electric vehicle announcements, specifically muscle car announcements. August 15th. That's the day to watch. I'm going to definitely tune in. They are expected to reveal their first electric muscle car concept. I'm looking forward to that. Still a bit skeptical, especially with the timeline, but it looks like we may know a lot more about what Dodge has planned for an electric muscle car later this
I,
summer.
I'd like to know if, like the modern Charger and Challenger, if they're going to pipe in engine noise into an EV muscle car.
Yeah, I mean, who would you say has done the best job at that? Because it's not engine noise, but who do you think
Yeah.
has done the best job at creating a soundtrack for their electric vehicles, which to those gearheads out there who are diehard muscle car fans, you're going to think this is just stupid to talk about, but it's there. I mean, most electric cars do have some kind of a soundtrack in them, not Teslas, I guess, but
Yeah.
what do you think?
Um, I mean, I don't like the
Me either.
fake noise.
Me either.
So, and like picking the best, I don't know. Um, the,
I
I mean, the Ionic is a nice sort of blend because it's not in your face. Like some of them are really like this is a sci-fi movie loud.
Yeah, for the Ionic 5, it's only on up to 23 miles per hour,
Yeah.
which is fine with me. But you can't turn it off. It's for pedestrian safety. But then you also have the Mustang Mach-E, where you have a variety of soundtracks that you can listen to at any speed, highway speeds. I think that's interesting, but I think they did a good job. My wife and I actually saw the electronic music producer in concert years ago that ended up being the one they hired to come up with the Mustang Mach-E's soundtrack. Strange. But yeah, imagine
For
being
me,
in.
the Monkey's just too loud.
Yeah.
I think that was for me. I don't mind the sounds. It's so loud,
Mhm.
and you don't need it to be. It doesn't need to be a V8 loud. It can be a nice four-cylinder loud while you're
Yeah.
driving through someone's neighborhood.
You want your electric car to sound like a CVT Altima?
Yeah. Well, here's what I don't want. I don't want every car to be EV and have Mustang Mach-E loudness while driving through a neighborhood in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that would be weird. And I've also thought about the pedestrian safety noises that EVs are. I believe now they're mandated here in the United
Yeah,
States to even have these sounds. Imagine a traffic jam of all electric vehicles. Everyone's going 15 miles per hour. You know how you can hear a beehive from like really far away? Are you going to be able to hear electric vehicle traffic from really far away because of the hum of all these pedestrian safety noises?
I'm telling you, Justin, you will be able to hear LA traffic from where you are.
That is going to be interesting. Wow. But that'll be like 50 years from now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
who knows?
Who knows? Now, you told me that there was something along the lines of a bio battery innovation that uses bacterial interactions to generate power.
Yeah,
Obviously, this is still in the
and,
lab, but tell
yeah,
me about this because as a
and
biologist, I'm interested.
it's not, we're not looking at EV level yet. Right now, they're talking about applications of radio antenna out in the middle of Alaska where power lines aren't getting there and stuff. So they're using bacteria to generate um, power. They have chambers. They started with two chambers. Now they have three chambers of different bacteria in there, and like in the three chamber model, they have a bacteria that creates photosynthesis, that creates food for the other two bacteria to grow. And as they interact with each other, they create an electrical charge. And now they've got it going from initially, I think a couple of years ago, they got it to last like 3 or 4 hours. And now this new innovation, they got it to go for just over a month. So a month with generating electricity just through bacteria. To me, that is an absolutely fascinating way forward. A living battery that generates its own electricity, no plugging in, no charging. It's generating its own. I mean, light years away from being able to do that in EV, but it does demonstrate all the different technologies and all the things that people are looking at and what they're being able to achieve looking at these technologies.
Yes, and it looks like their goal would be to be able to deploy these bio batteries to very small scale applications. So, the authors of the study that have been announcing this discovery have said with artificial intelligence, they're going to have an enormous number of smart standalone devices that need energy, right? So, one of the great applications of a miniaturized bio battery is going to be able to create a miniaturized energy harvester. That's a cool term. Miniaturized energy harvester. So not looking like it would ever be for electric vehicles, but this is still fascinating nonetheless. And it would not require a bunch of lithium.
No, yeah, and I don't know. We can say never going to be
You're right.
for
Never's a long
EV, but
time.
I mean, there. I remember stuff in the '80s that we said, it's too impractical, and now here we are. I've got a computer in my hand that's more powerful than NASA had to launch the space shuttle. So things change and they change quick.
Yeah. And I guess we'll wrap up the news today with a little bit of discussion about rental companies and Hertz. Because remember, back a few years ago when the pandemic was really roaring, um, Hertz was declaring bankruptcy, and then they ended up buying 100,000 Model 3s. How did we get here?
Yeah, yeah. How did I want to know how they did that? Yeah, I mean, I think the rental companies see a huge opportunity there, not only with the industry shifting, but people are very curious on EVs and they want to go out and they want to test them. And I think it's smart for the rental companies to start getting in there and going, yeah, you can get a weekend test drive with an EV through us. You can come here and see if this is what you want. I think it's really smart to have that category open and out there for people. But I think the whole industry is going to be changed. Is I see them switching over faster than the consumer.
Yeah, and Hertz alone has ordered 100,000 Teslas, but also 65,000 Polestar 2s.
Mhm.
Now, at that scale, I think they would start to see real savings when it comes to the maintenance costs that they incur.
Absolutely, and refueling costs. I mean, a lot of times they pass it on to the consumer, but they're still going to have. I understand here in California, at least, the Hertz is putting in solar in all of their uh, dealers or all of their rental agencies uh, to charge these vehicles. So there's a huge savings there for them as well.
Yeah, and I just looked up the numbers as of last year, or well, basically, Hertz's fleet fluctuates between 400,000 and 500,000 vehicles in their fleet, and their goal is to have 30% of their fleet be fully electric by just 2024. And if Tesla can manage to find the semiconductor chips and all the other parts they need, the batteries, and supply them the vehicles, I think Tesla alone could get them there with a order
Well,
of 100,000 vehicles.
yeah, let's say if they have 100,000 Teslas and 65,000 Polestar 2s, it's 165,000. If they normally have 400,000 vehicles, yeah, I say they're hitting pretty close to their goal.
Yep. Well, Justice, I think that wraps up the show for today. We've had a kind of a slow week, but we're learning more about why Tesla's prices are increasing. We're learning more about how the industry as a whole is shifting towards electric vehicles, why, how, and how they're going to get there. It's been interesting. Hopefully something crazy happens next week. Maybe we'll learn about, I don't know, what's the craziest thing that could happen? Apple unveils an Apple EV. Would that
Their
be
Apple car.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think they're gonna stick to running your vehicle rather than building it, but we'll see. You never
Yeah,
know.
they're probably studying how Tesla's decade-long journey has been full of ups and downs, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll stick with
Yeah.
Apple CarPlay."
Although, if anyone has the resources and the deep pockets to do it,
Ah,
it's Apple.
deep pockets must be nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Justice, and I will see you next week. Everyone have a great weekend. Feel free to email me at justin@joinyaa.com, or better yet, join the YAA community forum, where we have an electric vehicle forum for owners, prospective buyers, people who just like EVs, people who hate EVs. You can come along and just let us know what you think. Drop your questions in there, and Justice and I are always on the forum. So have a great weekend. Let's talk EVs again next week. Bye, Justice.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Justin.